Welcome everybody, and welcome to day 2 of AfricaFora Nzuko 2022, the Africa Economic and Cultural Week. Thank you everyone for joining us today on our second day for session 4, which is looking at an African narrative. I have a wonderful selection of speakers joining me today for this session. But before I start, maybe I should introduce AfricaFora for those of you who aren't familiar, who didn't join us yesterday or who weren't able to join us last year. Nzuko 2022 is an event that hopes to bring together Africa, her diaspora, but also friends of Africa and the diaspora together. It is articulated around Africa Day, which is today, so happy Africa Day, everyone, which is May 25th every year. And it hopes to address the continent's future, but also reframe the narrative by placing Africans, the diaspora, and the citizens at the core of the discussion, rather than giving the usual platform to the usual speakers. Africa's future and its successes in facing the current health, economic, social and security crisis that we're facing now in the world will only be defined by the strength of the relationship of Africa and its partners, more especially Europe and the European Union. And that can only come through honest and sincere dialogue, which we hope to enable today by giving our speakers the ability to share their wisdom and their experience on a variety of topics ranging from development to governance, looking at indigenous food systems, health systems, and looking at the African narrative. So my name is Crystal Udochi-Gaillard. I am the moderator for today. And just a bit about me, I work for Friends of Europe, working for the European Young Leaders Program, which is a remarkable leadership program that selects every year profiles all across Europe, as well as North America and the MENA region, to facilitate a model of collaborative leadership that we believe is necessary for a more sustainable future of Europe and its partners. We work very closely with an organization called the Africa EU Foundation. I also work on an organization that is called WISE, Women in International Security, and I work very hard on bringing more diversity in international security, because we all know the faces that we see are the usual typical old white men. So without further ado, we will start the session now, looking at an African narrative, placing Africans at the center of this narrative that has for too long been spinned by other people. And I will start with a contribution of one of our panelists who unfortunately wasn't able to join us today. So he has shared a short video that we will share with you. His name is Christopher Eret. He's a distinguished research professor at the University of California. He holds a PhD in African history and historical linguistics from the Northwestern University. And he has undertaken extensive historical, linguistic, and anthropological fieldwork in Africa. He has published a wide array of works, including books and around 100 research articles, all around the same topic. And these focus especially on bringing to light the many neglected aspects of early African history. As you all know, when we think of African history, we only think, well, we're only told about slightly pre-colonial times and everything afterwards. And so he works on identifying and establishing new sources of evidence for revealing that history. So without further ado, we will move into Mr. Eret's contribution. I believe we're having some technical issues. There is
arose in Eastern Africa. We retained our used language. I start with a comment, of course, that we are all Africans. And that's because, as I've said, our common ancestral communities arose in Eastern Africa. We retained our full modern linguistic capacities to think abstractly, to use language in all the complex ways, and so begin to be the human beings that we all are today. And no later than around 50,000 years ago, and some scholars argue even somewhat earlier, our descendants, the descendants of those common ancestors of all of us, began to spread out across the rest of the world, and also to spread out across the rest of the African continent. And here's a key thing to help us all understand this. It's not the continent of a single type of people. You know very well, dealing with people outside African continent, they somehow have an image of Africans as some single kind of people. No idea of how diverse it is. They have an image of, oh, maybe somebody from southern Nigeria. That's what all Africans look like and are. And of course, that's not true. Africa, and here's the key point on genetic side, it is in fact the most diverse continent of all. The ancestors of all the human beings who moved out from the continent 50,000 years ago and onward, they represent just one subset of that African diversity. So Africa has not been, here's our second key point that I always start out with in teaching, it's not been someplace off the edge of the world in its own particular place. Those of our ancestors who spread out after 50,000 years ago across the whole of the African continent, they didn't become some backward, unchanging people. And I always also hit on this. This is not something that visitors to Africa thought 1,000 years ago. It's something that has come to the fore. It's been invented by nonsense, invented by people who 400 years ago and onward have had to justify it to themselves why they were enslaving, mistreating other human beings. So now we have to look back and think about African history in a proper, balanced way and understand it. Africans were participants in, they were contributors to all the main lines, the main directions and developments that lead down to the world we live in today. Now, what I'm going to do is jump ahead slightly here. We're going to not look at 50,000 years down to 10,000 years ago. I'm going to take us on to a major transition that leads into the world we live in today. Between 10,000 and 5,000 BCE, a major world economic transition took place. And this was a transition fundamental to enabling the rest of all the economic developments that have transpired since then. What took place was that independently, in as many as 11 or 12 separate and widely separated parts of the world, human beings living in those distant areas independently set in motion a transformational shift, a shift that affected the primary economy of human life, the way we get food, the shift from foraging, that is hunting and gathering and so on, to agricultural ways of life. With agriculture, we can on and on increase our productivity in a great variety of ways, and we can support larger and larger populations in ways that foraging, that hunting and gathering could not. It freed up human beings to expand their populations, to do all the other sorts of changes we've gone through in the last 10,000 years. And Africans in 3 separate parts of Africa were among those 11 or 12 separate regions that brought agriculture into being. So where in Africa? Well, let's start with one case, West Africa, among societies speaking early languages of the Niger-Congo language family. And that's certainly something we can look at in the question time is, what do we mean when we're saying Niger-Congo speaking peoples who speak languages of that family? We can identify so people can see what different societies around Africa come out of that distant historical common ancestry. So in West African case, we have the early crops that some of them people will well know, pearl millet or bulrush millet, most well known. Fonio used to be a very, very important crop, and it's still significant in a lot of areas. The African groundnut, cowpeas, black-eyed peas, as you know what I say here, as we say in the United States. And then by 5,000, 6,000, 5,000 BC, yams became a very important additional major crop through a large area where Niger-Congo peoples lived. So where else in Africa, though? Well, a second important area was in the eastern parts of the long Sudan belt of Africa. And there it was people who spoke languages of a different family, the Nilo-Saharan family, who began independently to shift to agricultural ways of life. And there's an especially notable crop in world agriculture that comes out of these people's region, and that's sorghum. They also independently, separately domesticated pearl millet in the eastern areas too, and something else, or melons begin to come, watermelons, one of them, come out of the African contributions to world agriculture. And finally, a third area in the southern highlands of today's Ethiopia. And the people involved were people who spoke the languages of the Omotic language group. Again, we can do some identification later on if people are interested in identifying that. And very different agriculture. The major early crop was the insect plant. And what the key part of the people ate was the corms, the part under the ground of this plant. And it became the kind of sort of basis of the diet that yams would do, for instance, in large areas of West Africa, that inner part of the plant. Now, it's not only that Africans were involved in bringing about this great shift in the primary economy of humankind. Africans living well south in Africa, they were direct contributors as well to the major lines of early human technological invention that lead down to the technological world we live in today. Now, there's several different lines that we can talk about of how technology of early times moves on to the modern times. One of the very important foundational steps was the development of technologies using heat to transform the chemistry of materials. And the first major, really foundational step within that line of technological development was the invention of the first ceramics. Now, it so happens that people in East Asia took this step first of all in history around 20,000 years ago, way off in the farthest, almost farthest East Asia. But it was Africans who independently, 8,000 or 9,000, 10,000 kilometers away, independently invented both the second and the third earliest ceramic technologies in world history. This is something to think about as we look at world history too in general. Human beings independently have come up with many times with the same inventions. Human beings are innovative and creative all around the world, Africa no less than any other part. And it was speakers of early Niger-Congo languages living in today's Mali who created the first African ceramic technology sometime a bit before 9500 BCE. That's more than 11,500 years ago. And that's 3,000 years before the Middle East had ceramic technology, and even longer before this technology reached Europe. So when people say, oh, this people in Europe or somewhere else are all advanced or whatever, hey, go back in history and time and people are moving along, and it's other places that have been ignored that may be the most important areas. And in this case, in ceramic technology, two different areas of Africa, because also not much later, far east in what's today Sudan, the country of Sudan, speakers of Nilo-Saharan languages, as far as we can tell independently, 3,000 kilometers away from Mali, invented ceramic technology as well.
Thank you. So that was Mr. Christopher Ehet's contribution in global history in Africa. Unfortunately, he won't be able to take questions today because he wasn't able to join us. But I think that was an enlightening commentary to help us reframe our understanding of, well, not all of us, but some of us understanding of African history and the very little knowledge that's being shared worldwide on pre-colonial times and early African history, and the fact that culture and agriculture and technological advances did not all originate coincidentally around the Mediterranean or in Europe. Without further ado, I will move to our next speaker today, who is Elizabeth Twenko-Fabu, who is the founder and the CEO of Haute Afrique, a textile company that uses fabric as an authentic expression of African heritage and identity. She is an experienced executive who advocates for the economic independence of the African continent and is an expert in procurement, oil, gas, and negotiation. Today, Elizabeth will be talking to us about African fabric, African storytelling. Elizabeth, you have the floor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Crystal. Good morning, everyone, and happy Africa Day. Professor Christopher Ehret's expose on African history is just a really beautiful opening for this discussion on the African narrative. And I'm really happy he said that, because I believe that we need that reminder. We need a reminder as South Africans to see what we're able to do and what we've done in the past. And things have happened along the way, but then that's in the past. And right now, today, we're trying to take certain steps, to bring back, to revisit that knowledge and glory that we had in the past. And so we'll talk about Haute Afrique and what our mission is and how we believe that with fabric and textile, we can change the narrative on the African continent. One African writer whom I love very dearly, late Chinua Achebe, once said that until the lion tells his side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. I think that says it all. And what Professor Ehret said is that until we own our narrative, until we own our history, our heritage, somebody else will always tell the story according to how it suits them. And so looking at this and thinking about how can we, own our history and our narrative, without sounding too political or too economic. And how do I touch the masses, to adhere to this story? Because Madame Gaia said something when we had a discussion before the session started. She said something about awareness, and I think that is really key. So I looked at fabric, and why am I using fabric as a tool, for the authentic expression of the African narrative? Fabric, or African fabric, or print as we call it, some Nigerians call it Ankara. In Cameroon, where I'm from, we call it Rapa. In different parts of Africa, some call it Kitenge. What is it? It is kind of like a staple, like rice. Everybody eats rice every day. Yam, as the professor said, in West Africa, and injera in Ethiopia. So fabric is kind of like a staple thing for us. We all wear them all the time. And so, but then this fabric that we wear came to Africa per history with the Dutch. That means in the 1800s. And when I look at numbers online on what the Dutch company is producing this fabric, I see that 99% of what they sell, and I looked at the numbers, COVID, about $394 million, and 99% of this was bought by Africans. So that means this fabric, African fabric, is an integral part of our identity. And I looked at it in detail, and it was, what does this fabric actually say? It's just bright colors. But since this is something that we all use, women and people in Africa of all walks of life do consume this product, which is the African fabric. How about using this fabric to start telling a story about Africa, to start changing the narrative on the continent? How do we access so many people, by giving them an experience of something that they already like, but, just to change the experience behind it and help them and use the fabric for them to express their Africanness. So the idea came about to Africanize this fabric that we wear, use it to tell stories about our history, our heritage, our culture, talk about the people in African history who have done great things for the continent. Okay, look like what Professor Ahad said. I've learned a lot on his little short expose. I wish he was here on the panel for us to learn a little bit more. How many of us know about Mansa Musa, the great king of Mali, whom in 1300, is claimed to be alleged to be the richest man in history of the world? He, this man, I think he brought colonialism to Africa because when explorers saw the affluence of his entourage going on his Hajj, and people wondered, how could someone have so many riches? And he was really affluent. So we want to use fabric as a tool because everybody uses it. Nobody thinks twice when they go to the market to buy this piece of fabric. But we want to shift the paradigm to say, when you buy this piece of fabric, you know that you are telling a story. When you wear it, when I wear this traditional dress that comes from my village in Bangla, everybody asks me, what is this? And I tell them the history behind it, where I come from, and what is the history behind this dress? What does it represent? The necklaces and everything. So within fashion, people wear things to express who they are. And so we would use fashion now to change the narrative on the continent. And again, it has serious economic and political implications. About 20 years ago or more, when Nigerian movie industry became a big thing, I remember my late dad saying, this is a colonization of Africa. I said, what do you mean? He said, these movies, this is a colonization of Africa. And it is really, because going down to South Africa, everybody says, now, yes, so, everybody now tries to speak like a Nigerian. Nigerian pidgin is now commonplace in Africa. It's in every home. So let's use things like movies and even fabric, to get to people and to create that awareness, to help us own our Africanness, to help us own our heritage, and to change the story. And we use fabric to help people, and we want the fabric produced in Africa. Since 2005, when the World Trade Organization uplifted sanctions on China, many fabric industries on the continent shut down, because everything now is produced in India and in China and brought on the continent. So the main idea is that we should, since this fabric, we use it a lot, we buy 99% of it from the records we can see. How about we start doing this fabric, designing and producing it back on the continent? And again, it's people like us in the private sector of the civil society who can change things, because we work with people, we have our agendas and we work with people, and we can reach out to many people just by something good. The experience of wearing the fabric, you wear it, you tell a story. You tell a story about the history of the Wondo people. Many people don't know where they come from. There's another coast in Cameroon called Bimbia where slaves were sold off from. How many people know about a few people? And we tell the stories of all. Do you know Ibeno in Nigeria? Lagos is the longest beach in West Africa. Not many people know it, but with fabric, we will tell that story. We will show a different picture of the continent, one of beauty, one of resilience, one of innovation, and one of change, because we're just helping Africans to own their history, to tell their own story.
Yeah.
Other people have told their story for a very long time, and it is now time for us to own our story and to tell it. And we choose at Otafric to tell that story with what we wear, because the strongest expression I can make of myself is by what I wear, because you see that even before you have an opportunity to talk to me or to know what I have in my head. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were really, it's really inspiring, and there's so much truth to what you say. Not only the fact that we import so much of of the fabric, but also how we need to reclaim what was originally ours. We will take some comments and questions from the audience on this, but we will do that at the end of all the intervention of the speakers. So I want to encourage everyone in the audience right now. You can already start shooting your questions at us using the Q&A function or the chat function. If there's anything that is being said that you would like to share with the audience and react with, please make use of the chat function. But before that, I will move to our second speaker, which is Chibu Akwike, who will be talking to us, about taking back control of our narrative. Chibu is the co-founder of Pedro's, which is Africa's first indigenous premium spirit made 100% from organic palm spirit. Prior to Pedro, Chibu held a variety of roles in finance and business management in the US, working across multiple industries such as investment management, manufacturing, real estate, and financial services. Chibu's passion is to create a quintessentially African and best-in-class organization within Nigeria. And since then, he has been lending his finance experience and entrepreneurial skills to propelling the growth of the continent's first indigenous premium spirit brand. And beyond this, he continues to enjoy finding new solutions to the various challenges brought about by this venture. So Chibu, thank you so much for joining today. And
thank you, Crystal. Hello, everybody, and happy Africa Day to you all. I am very excited to be here. I'm glad to hear what the professor said earlier. Basically, life started in Africa, but for some reason, that truth is always evaded in all the history books that we read today. You know, when we all go to school, right from primary school all the way through university. And also, Elizabeth, I love your hat. I wish I can get one. Maybe we will need to talk so I can figure out how to get a hold of that hat. It just looks like the braids, you know, I don't know, you know, in traditional Igbo society, you know, there's like, Anakwe is Nzuko, speaking Igbo, but it's like a small braid and then it just comes like puffs, you know, like mushrooms, you know, in your hair. And I really love it, you know, so I just love to see all these traditional aspects of like African lifestyle all around me. So I hail from Nigeria and I'll be speaking from the perspective of an entrepreneur that was living in the West for quite a few years and then moved back home to start a business. And the business is a beverage business, is spirits. And in Nigeria it's called Ogogoro, or one of the names is Ogogoro. And Ogogoro, I believe, is a Yoruba word. And in Igbo language, we call it Kai Kai. In parts of Ghana and certain parts of Nigeria, they call it Akpeteshi. But basically what it is a palm spirit. It's a spirit that comes from the palm tree. So when you tap the sap of a palm tree, there's a white substance that comes out. Most of us know it as palm wine. And then when you ferment palm wine and distill it, there is a clear white distillate that comes from it. And that is the spirit that, you know, we all enjoy in different parts of our lives, you know, in Nigeria and across Africa. And for us, we decided to take it to a different level. So the history of Ogogoro is quite interesting. I'm still learning about it, so I'm not yet an expert. However, it has a very somewhat dark history, and we're trying to change that narrative now. So from our knowledge, or my knowledge, Ogogoro is a spirit that our forefathers has been making before the white man actually came to the shores of Africa. However, prior to that, this is new information that I just learned a couple of weeks ago. the Dutch was trading schnapps in Africa a long time ago. And then I think at that time they were the world powers, as you know, history may have it. And when the British became the global power, they were not happy that the Dutch were still trading with different people in Africa. So they really wanted to make money for the crown. And they found a way to kick out the Dutch and then started trading gin with people all across Africa. And because they were getting tax revenue for the crown, they made sure that any other type of spirit that was being produced in those areas where they dominated was squashed. So obviously, Ogogoro fell victim to this. And I think it's probably the similar story for like Omole in Cameroon or Sodabi in Benin Republic, and even in Kenya, you know, Changa as well. But since then, Ogogoro then had a very negative image in specifically the Nigerian society. So even till today, most people call it, you know, illicit gin, illegal gin, or local gin. But the fact of the matter is Ogogoro is not gin. I just explained exactly how Ogogoro is made. It's literally the sap of the palm tree, the raffia or the oil palm tree that is distilled, and then you get a clear white spirit from it. Whereas gin is a grain spirit that the primary botanical is juniper berry. Juniper berry do not grow in most parts of Africa, at least in West Africa. Juniper berry is a temperate, you know, just think of like the pine tree, Christmas tree, right? Those kinds of species of tree grow in temperate regions. So it's mostly colder parts of Africa and, you know, like in Europe, but they are just not tropical weather trees. So to call Ogogoro gin is like calling, I don't know, a goosey soup, a sandwich or something, you know? So it just makes no sense at all. So for everyone listening, please, Ogogoro is not gin. Yeah, Akpateshi is not gin, Kai Kai is not gin, Omole is not gin, Changa is not gin. All right, they're their own unique products that we make for ourselves and we consume ourselves. But then why do I even have to talk about this whole gin scenario? Is because the colonials have orchestrated a well executed propaganda to get us to believe that the things that we own are inferior. And as Elizabeth said, you know, she was quoting Chinua Achebe, effectively, the victor always tells the story, right? And unfortunately, you know, we have not done a very good job of telling our own story. But I think it's high time that we just take control of our narrative, right? For us at Pedro's, we call it the New African Narrative. These things that we quote unquote consider local and inferior, in the West, people actually pay premium for it because they are considered handcrafted, right? So if people are paying serious money for handcrafted goods in the West, why is it that we in Africa look at our own locally produced handcrafted goods as something that is inferior, and we will always want to import either from China more recently, or usually from Italy, right? You know, most of our shoes, most people, they want the Italian brand, whereas you can actually get like authentic leather or some kind of animal skin, a shoe that is made with one of these locally in Africa. So our whole aim and our goal is to tell our story, tell the story of the New African Narrative, and tell the story of what I consider African excellence. And that's what we're trying to achieve at Pedro's by producing a world-class spirit that is done locally in Africa, and then we're taking it to the world.
Thank you so much, Chibu, for this inspiring statement that indeed we need to call our things what they are and stop saying this is, Nigerian gin or Rwandan gin, but actually calling it the name that it is and making it a staple name that people will increasingly know to refer to. Before I can keep encouraging the audience to put questions to Chibu on this and to Elizabeth. But before I take your questions, I will move over to our last speaker for the day, who is John Amanam Sunday. John is, AKA Immortal, is an artist and the CEO of Immortal Cosmetic Art. He has a patent as the first African to produce hyper-realistic prosthetists, and he owns the only indigenous company in Africa to produce hyper-realistic flesh covers for amputees of the African skin. John is on a mission to restore confidence and comfort to amputees all over the world and in Africa in particular. He has been honored with several awards for his pioneering work, and he aims to spread the vision that art is a creative tool for problem solving. John, thank you so much for joining us today. You will be speaking to us, sorry, you'll be speaking to us about Think Africa, re-examining our potential as Africans. Thank you. John, you're on mute.
Hi, everyone,
Hello.
and good morning. Hi, Krista. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Chibu, and the rest of the panelists. Thank you for having me. And I must say, I'm happy, I'm proud to be part of this concept. It's a very interesting one. Like she said, like Krista said, I'll just show you a little of what we do. For those who don't know, I produce flesh covers for amputees, and these are some of my products. First of all, I'll begin by saying being an African is an interesting one. It's a proud thing to be an African. That is one of the things we Africans fail to understand, that you have to be proud to be an African. As my topic details, Think Africa, re-examining our potentials as Africans. I would say Africa is blessed with resources, and there's this misconception that Africa is poor. Africa is not poor. Africa is only sick of mental poison. We have been poisoned, we've been conditioned, and there's a form of conspiracy to make us feel inferior, to make us also feel when we can't get there, we are not productive, we've not contributed to the civilizations that have made the world what it is today. Africa has a good history, and Africa has problems as well. But we have to, as innovatives, fight and try to be useful to the continent itself. I'm taking an instance from myself. When I started producing prostheses, I had companies come up to me telling me they would like me to be in USA, they would like me to be in Germany, I should come and produce, I should work for their companies. And I refused, I rejected those offers, not because I was super rich, but for the fact that I discovered my talent. I made all of the innovation, the discoveries here in Africa. How is my Africa benefiting from what I discovered? It is one of the questions we creatives must realize. We have to ask ourselves these questions. How are we giving back to the African society? How African are we in the African society? You find so many people out there, they travel to US for 5 months, 6 months, and before you know, you discover they start speaking like the Europeans. But you hardly find the Europeans or the Westerners come down to Africa and speak like Africans, because they have the pride that they cannot speak like Africans, that they are Europeans and we are Africans. It is one of the things we've lost over the time, that pride, that sense of belonging, being proud of the fact that you are an African. You find even the media stations doing worse to this. They come up with
John, I'm afraid you're frozen. We've lost you.
to look at as Africans. We have to have that pride. We have to preserve as our identity. And we have to make sure that the African society benefits from everything we do, from the mindset, the school system, the academic system. The academic system, the medical system, the work we find ourselves doing. Oh,
sorry,
Africa is blessed.
You were interrupted. Please continue.
Okay, Africa is blessed, and we may have different challenges, but that doesn't make us different from the rest of the world. We have gone far. We have to identify our problems. One of the problems we have is we are too relaxed. We've been westernized. Every African wants to behave like the West, from the songs we sing, the food we eat, the places we go, you know. You find an African man finding it more interesting traveling to Europe, but we have Tanzania, we have Ghana, we have Ethiopia, and the rest of the continent. So how do we think Africa? How do we involve our creativity in the continent by not getting lost? You know, the Chinese spent some time with the US. They've learned some of the technologies from the US. They've improved on their own, but they've refused to lose their identity as China. We find them insisting on made in China. Every time they produce a particular product, we discover they don't forget to detail their name, made in China. We Africans must learn to encourage our names. If you're in Ghana and you make a product, let it be made in Ghana, made in Ethiopia, made in Zimbabwe, wherever you are. You have to be proud of who you are. A friend of mine, Akan David, once said some time ago, he said, until the African man appears in his true self as an African, he will never be respected. We have Africans all over the world, and some who say they are American, Black American, and the rest of the names. We have Africans in Brazil and the rest of them. We are all Africans, and there is nothing we can do about it. Being an African is in the blood. It is not by the name Africa. That is why we are facing similar challenges all over the world. Find yourself in the US and you say you are a Black American, but you're still oppressed. You're still victimized because it boils down to the fact that you are still an African. So we have to change the narrative. We have to identify these problems. We have to have that self-consciousness that no matter what happens, we are still Africans, and we have to work on ourselves individually and collectively. We have to come together. We have been brainwashed. We have been conspired against. We also have to conspire against, not against the world, for ourselves. We have to conspire for ourselves. We have to come together, creatives from different angles, coming together to look at the way forward. Currently, we are working with a company in Côte d'Ivoire who produce, they specialize in the production of bionics, and it's a way forward. I don't produce bionics, my company doesn't produce bionics, but the collaboration, the synergy of different energies from the African continent would help in defining the narrative. Africa is a brand, and we have to protect it. We have to work towards the development of Africa, not as an individual, but as a brand, which is a collective, a name for the collectives of Africa. So we should avoid, as creatives, being westernized. It's normal, as Jerry Rawlings of Ghana said. He said, you can Christianize me, but do not westernize me. Don't get westernized. Don't forget the fact that you are from somewhere in Cameroon. Like myself, I'm from southern Nigeria in a local government called Sedata. I am very proud of it. And I some time ago, I think 2 years ago, I spoke. I was given the opportunity to speak with Nike, the Nike company who produce shoes. And I told them that every morning I wake up and I look at my hand, there's a black band. It reminds me, it's not voodoo, it's nothing. It just reminds me of how African I am. and how proud I should be, how much I should defend the fact that I am Black and I am not sorry about that. So Africans must be intentional about their development, and we must be proud of the fact that we are Africans. We have to work towards developing ourselves. We have to be serious about it. We have been given the platform of entertainment. Africans are more of entertainers. We've been the kings of entertainment. Let us shift from that and become the kings of production, the kings of manufacturing. We should get to look at everything around us. From the food we eat, we have to innovate. From the clothes, everything has to be African, and that's where the world will have to will respect us, because they know in our consciousness you can't take that Africanness from the African. So I advise and I propose that we look at our history as well to understand who we are first, because the lack of proper knowledge of history could also keep us backward and make us feel we cannot compete with the rest of the world. So in a nutshell, I conclude, let's think of Africa in all we do politically and the rest of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for that as well. I love how you've all been able to link your comments with each other, especially with Professor Eret, who wasn't even here. There's definitely a strong theme here that we have so much potential. It's just that we need to associate the pride to it, and we need to put the names on it so that we can keep promoting our heritage and our potential, rather than relying on others' established status in the world, and just keep thinking of Africa as the one that's trailing behind, when in fact it's the one that has the highest potential, both in terms of resources, but also in terms of the people inhabiting the continent and the diaspora, of course. So I see there are a few questions coming and comments coming in through the chat and through the Q&A. But before this, I just maybe wanted to ask maybe Chibu and Elizabeth, based on your comments, could you, well, actually, no, I think this could be put to the three of you. Could you all tell us very briefly, I'll ask you to stick to 2 minutes maybe, to tell us what inspired you to enact your belief in the need for an African narrative, to channel that into a business venture? Can you, or joining a business venture that really promoted that? What was the thing that triggered you putting this into a commercial idea? Elizabeth, you want to maybe take that question first?
Okay, 6 years ago, my sister was living in Malawi, and so I went to visit her. And Malawi is in Southeastern Africa. So she was from West Africa, and she wore predominantly African wear. So the ladies there were saying, oh, we like your clothes, we like the fabric, we want some. So when I went to visit, she said, can you bring the fabric? So I came with half a suitcase, and it went like in no time. 3 months later, I went with 2 suitcases, and the same thing happened. So I saw there was a lot of interest, and then they were asking, oh, we want you to sew the clothes and stuff. And so I was like, hey, this is good business, and why am I not pursuing this idea? And in that, I started thinking again. I said, but we call this thing African fabric. Where is the African on this fabric? I just see bright colors and flowers. I don't see anything African, on this. And so that got me thinking, and I was like, no, I think first thing we need to do is we need to Africanize the fabric, make it really look African. And that's where the storytelling bit came into it, because as you know, we translate culture from one generation to another by telling stories and everything. And I said, okay, fine. If 99% of Africans make 99% of Holland wax revenue, per annum. So how about we start helping these people wear African wear that's really African, that tells stories about the African culture and heritage. So that is what, that's how the idea, turning this into a business, that's how it came about.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. John, maybe can you tell us a bit more, or tell the audience, because I'm familiar with the backstory, but tell the audience a bit more about what pushed you into channeling this belief that you have, which is essential, into a commercial venture. although it does fall under health, as we know.
All right. The whole idea of going into the production of prostheses came 4 years ago when my younger brother had an accident and he lost some of his fingers. And I never thought of producing prostheses until we tried purchasing it from Germany. And then I realized they were keen about giving the white skin, like the Caucasian skin, prostheses to us. They didn't care of the skin color. And I asked myself, why can't I solve this need? And I decided to research because I wanted to solve the need. And I realized after the research, I solved the need. I was able to find a way of producing flesh covers for the African skin. And I realized that it wasn't available in the African market. I decided to venture, I decided to make it business by putting more effort, increasing my research, and also making standard products that would match any African skin. So what got the inspiration, where I got the inspiration was the fact that only an African to understand the African problem. You know, the Europeans will not solve any problem for which is African. They only solve their basic needs. So we have to also solve our own problems by finding our problems and focusing on it and ensuring that we solve it the African way to fit our needs.
Thank you so much, John. Chibu, quick comments telling us a bit of the backstory that motivated you from making the shift from the US into promoting a Nigerian kai or ogoro, as you mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So for me, it was about identity, heritage, and self-worth. We all know all across the world, we celebrate in one fashion or the other, whether in birth or in death, and spirits, wine, some kind of beverage is involved in that process. And I just never saw anything that represented where I came from or who I am. So when my business partner and I got together, she actually came up with the idea. And I thought it was, the craziest thing at the time, but I was just excited to get started. And then, in the initial phase, people were laughing at us because it was like, how are you going to move from America, come back to Nigeria, and you want to sell ogogoro? Are you mad? But we still took it on, we took it on the chin and we continued to go. And, another sad thing about it too is that we actually didn't get the support locally, in Nigeria, because everybody wanted the imported, stuff from France and America and wherever. It was actually the expatriate community. And then this is kind of like the crazy thing about this whole venture, where we're going about Africa and supporting Africa, and you go in there, you're passionate about it. Obviously, it's also a business venture. But, your own people don't take onto it, but, that tide is shifting a little bit more right now, because our first set of customers were expatriates that were actually taking it as a gift, that they were taking out of the country. But, that has switched a little bit. For us, it's just identity, heritage, because we believe that our identity and our heritage is very, very rich. And I think we just need to re-educate ourselves because it's a product that we're making for us, by us. And that is coming into fruition right now. And we just really need to showcase that to the entire world. I think from the viewpoint of a Nigerian, the Nigerian music and movie industry has really shifted and made a mark in the world. And we want to also change that whole thing of like Nigerians being crooks and, those kinds of stereotypes to showing that there's a lot more value that can come from Nigeria, not just from the entertainment space, but from things that are tangible that represents African culture.
Thank you so much, Chibu. John, I see you have your hand raised up. Do you want to maybe jump in and comment?
Yes, I want to say something. And we have a lot of very creative Africans out there. So many have done a lot of remarkable innovations and inventions. But I discovered that most of the Africans who go there don't come back, and Africans don't profit from most of the things we do, especially Africans who were not given the opportunity to explore by the African community. For instance, there is a product by Ghanaian called My Mano. It's an airport that can translate more than 40 languages immediately. And this product is not available in Africa. Africans don't have access to this product. In short, it is controlled by the Switzerland market. And even when I tried to purchase it, it said that they don't have stocks for Africa. So in all that we produce, in all that we do, in all our creativity, if the continent does not benefit from it, I think we have a long way to go. That's what I want to say.
Thank you so much, John. That is
Thank you
a
very
good
much.
And I have a follow-up question for you. I just want to warn everyone in the audience that, thank you, Chibu, but you can learn more about the speaker and their products by visiting our website. We've linked everything in their bio. So if you just go on the event page and you can have a look through the speakers' bios, you have all the information about their ventures. So John, what aspects does Think Africa, which was the key theme of your contribution here, how does that come to life in your work and the work of your company, employees, and partners? How do you materialize that?
Okay. The concept of Think Africa is an ideology that should be adopted in our everyday life. For instance, in my company, we use local names. We start with the names. My staff, we have particular names that are African. No matter your name, I know my name is John, but my services are rendered with African names. And we make sure we protect that fact, and we use it as a culture over the years. And all our staffs have an African name. They know themselves within the company. That's one. I have over the years also avoided being taken out of the continent. I do travel, I go outside the continent, but I find it difficult to even own properties outside the country, of the continent. I may own within the continent, but not outside the continent. I always think of Africa first in all I do, in my company, in transactions and the rest of them, because I feel the West have taken enough of Africans. In short, most of the technologies we are seeing out here, if we check well, are mostly done by Africans. But since we have been taken off, we find it difficult to recognize and enjoy from these innovations. So Thinking Africa boils down to the fact that in all I do, in my level, my thoughts, in my actions, in my creativity, I make sure it profits me first as an African, then any other person.
Thank you. I see there are still a few questions and comments coming in through the speakers. I apologize in advance if we're not able to cover all of them. But I have a few more questions. I have one for Chibu. There was something that is also important about Kaikai is the production process, and something I read, which was the fact that in rural environments, a poorer quality of Kaikai can be produced, and there's knowledge lost, and the fact that it does put health in danger. So is it something that you're trying to address through Pedro's as well? Because you did say, like, first it was foreigners that were bringing Pedro's back as a gift, and now we're trying to get more locals involved in buying it. But are you trying to address, the lack of quality that we can find in rural, local Kaikai as well through this venture?
Yes, thanks for that question. So just a point of correction, it was mostly foreigners that were taken out, so everything is being done in Nigeria. But yeah, there is, unfortunately, some instances where there is a poorly produced ogogoro out there in the marketplace. But how that happens is usually through the rural production process, where people are using very archaic equipment or just like makeshift distillation stills. So what we do is we actually maintain the value chain. So we don't run like, plantations, so to speak. So we have a collection of local palm wine tapas, and actually it's actually mostly women that do the first level of distillation of our product. So they do this in their local communities, all the way from Sapele down to Badagry. For those that know, basically the coastal regions of Nigeria. And what we then do is we collect that locally brewed or distilled ogogoro. We bring it to our facility in Lagos, and then we run it through a fractional distillation using a much more modern distillation still, where we separate the components of the spirit to harvest the heart of the spirit, which is the good thing that we all get, we all get wavy from, let me use that word. So that is where the premiumization happens. So we ensure that all the methylated spirit that may harm you, in some instances, it may cause blindness or just very toxic substances in your body. We make sure that we separate those out, and we just bottle the heart of the spirit, so to speak. Literally, actually, the heart of the spirit. And that's what makes it into a bottle. So what we produce is a refined, 100% organic, natural palm sap.
And that's impressive, and it's good also to show that what is produced locally is of quality, and it's just not just this myth of rural poor quality quick kai, and rather that it's something that can be enjoyed, a luxurious product that can be enjoyed just as they enjoy gin in Europe.
Yeah, and just one comment is, I want to say that the producers are quite discerning, and I use that word very intentionally, because there's this idea that discernment is quote unquote for the rich, but it is not. Our local producers are very discerning. The challenge is just that they don't have the knowledge or the money to buy or use better equipment in their production process. But as far as taking care to produce what they do, right from the tree all the way to the finished product, there's a level of discernment and beauty in all of that. So I want to highlight that.
No, and that's very important, and it seems to be a theme that goes way beyond the production of Pedro's, that it's not a lack of discernment or passion for what people are producing, but rather a lack of access, potentially, like you said, to knowledge or facilities to allow them to do it in the ideal conditions. But regardless, they do come out with an ideal product. And it's also something that we'll be showcasing later, as we have an exhibitor that has shared their product with us, and that is working out of her home, but is producing extremely high quality upcycle home furniture that is being sought out from all over the continent, but also from Europe and elsewhere. People who are completely passionate about what they're producing and dedicating so much time to it, and breaking the myth that it's poor quality. And that goes back to what John said earlier. When things come out of China, it says that it's come out of China. Everywhere in Europe, every country is trying to fight to be able to have their little flag on their products and say this is made in France, made in Italy. And we need to be equally proud of things that come out of Africa, and not just say made in Africa, but say in the country in which it's made in Nigeria, made in Ghana, made in Kenya, and have this pride and this identity to say this product is coming from here. It has all the knowledge and the heritage and the culture behind it. And even if it doesn't, even if it's a lambda product, as we would say, the pride that comes with saying this comes from here, this will also help us spin and reclaim the narrative that has been stolen out of our hands for so long. One last question, and I'll wrap up this session. Elizabeth, I have a question, because we know that you are passionate about the the economic independence of the continent. So maybe you can tell us how enterprises such as yours, AfricaFora, can inch the continent closer towards this economic independence. How do we do that? Through storytelling.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. Like I said earlier, that the private sector, rather the civil society, we own the change that we want on the continent. Because I think most African countries, after 60 years or so of independence, we haven't seen much progress, that we're still going around in circles. So companies like myself, and I call on other companies and myself, is how do we fight for this economic independence? Like, first of all, we have to make people with the products that we sell, John and Chibu, I think we're all aligned. The products that we give out to the people are products that remind them of their Africanness and call them to believe and take pride in that. We can only achieve economic independence, as John said, is if we start manufacturing and producing things on the continent, change our trade deficits, import less and export more. That is one way that will generate a lot of income and just let money stay on the continent. Because, for example, when I look at African print, right now, all the African print, majority of them, like the ones based in Ghana, are owned by Blisco. So other than paying taxes and salaries, the rest of the money, that the revenue that is generated from the sales here on the continent moves back to Holland. And of course, the cost of money in Holland is very cheap compared to the cost of money over here. We're all entrepreneurs, and it's so difficult to find funding, to do our businesses, because everything is just so expensive. Access to funds, and even when you find them, very high interest rates, those are deterrent, and it stops people from actually investing and doing business. So let's start small, because we always have these big ideas. We want big things. Let's start small. Chibu is doing his fabric. Let's start small. I don't own a fabric factory, but what do? I have the designs. I design them. Somebody else can produce them and I can sell them. And I'm starting small, but it's just like we should make the step. And I think the first thing is that we should make our fellow Africans aware. If I quit a job at a Fortune 500 company to start this, it's because I believe in it, and that other people, young people, will see that, we can work for ourselves and we don't necessarily have to go to school and go work for someone else and earn salaries, that we can also generate money and make people earn salaries by us furthering the economic agenda of the continent, by creating jobs, by my company, for example, art. Art is something that parents, when a child tells the parent, oh, I want to paint, they're like, are you mad? Will this pay fees? Will this take you to hospital? Go and learn law or do engineering. What is this? Art now, which one? But then my company gives children an opportunity that they can use their art to tell stories. They can use it to paint, that they don't only have to paint on canvas. They can do designs, teach them a little bit of how to use computer, and they can use this art, show them different ways by which they can use this, because that is innovation and ideas that also come to further the agenda, tell stories about our continent, and also make money from it. I saw the video you shared yesterday about the fabric that is made in, I've forgotten the name, is it
Akwete?
Yes, Akwete, exactly. Look at Akwete, that culture, okay, the woman who started it says is to stay within Akwete, but of course, I just expect every young person in Akwete to know the art and know how to do it, to mass produce it, so that everybody on the continent can use it. Now that I've learned of it, I would definitely want to own a piece of it, because I have the awareness. I didn't know. I've seen it on movies, but where does it come from? I have no idea. And I wrote it down because I'm like, I need to look at this. So it's all stuff that we have to produce more, import less, and export more. So I want to start with clothes. Everybody wears clothes. We have a huge African community in the diaspora. I want my shirts, fabric that I make, I want them to sell them in H&M. That if you go into H&M or Yves Saint Laurent, you can see something with fabric that I've made, because we want to spread it all over. We're putting it in the context of everybody can use it. Yes, we want our culture, but we have to export that culture.
I'm going to have to wrap up. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but hopefully we can start seeing all of your clothes, not only in H&M, but potentially in stores of their own, and see Pedro's also in all the shelves in all the stores when we go to Marks and Spencer's in the UK, Carrefour in France, and all of these shops, and see these things being mass produced, but also being on all the shelves back home and being consumed by ourselves. So this unfortunately brings this super interesting panel and conversation to an end. I wish this could go on forever. I'm already quite behind on time, so I apologize to everyone, and thank you so much for bearing with us. I want to thank again all of our panelists today, Chibu Akukwe, Elizabeth Twenko Fabu, and John Anamam Sunday, for joining us for this conversation looking at an African narrative. This was very rich. For more information on the speakers, you can always go back to our website, where there's all the information in the bio of the speakers and all of the information that you need. They have put some of their information in the chat here. Before we move on to our next session today, that will be looking at African development, less talking, more doing, we're going to have a short musical interlude by an artist called Kuku, who is a Nigerian American singer and songwriter. He bridges the gap between his Yoruba ethnicity and the Occidental culture, and he has 6 studio albums, movies, and has worked on advertisement soundtracks and international concert. And he's unapologetically titled 7th album is called Kiss My Ass. It is a powerful statement, but it resonates with a lot of what we've done today. So I will leave you to enjoy for a few minutes his haunting multi-octave voice, percussive folk guitar stylings, and conscious yet playful songwriting skills that is very unique and culturally resonating as much as it is cosmopolitan. So without further ado, I'll leave you with that. And then in 5 minutes, I'll see you again for our next session on African development, less talking, more doing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Bury me naked, face down, leave my rear exposed. Bury me naked, face down, leave my rear exposed. Let my headstone read right above my grave. Let my headstone say, write it nice and bold. Kiss my ass. Kiss my ass. Kiss my black ass. Kiss my ass. Give me roses now, not when I'm dead and gone. Don't leave no flowers by my grave, yeah, you've been told. Dead men can't smell no roses. Don't kill no flowers for me. Save your fake tears of mourning. Too late to show you love me. Kiss my ass, yeah. Kiss my ass. Kiss my black ass, yeah. Kiss my ass, yeah. I said it, yeah, 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 yeah. No, I'm not gonna bite the dust until I'm old. I'm gonna live a fruitful life, for yes, I know. Yeah, you gon' hear about me. I swear you hear about me like Robert Nesta Marley. And if you don't like it, kiss my ass. Kiss my ass. Kiss my black ass. Kiss my ass. Bury me naked. Bury me naked. Bury me naked. Faith, I'll leave my ass exposed. Let my folks come see a final show. Come see about